Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Friday at 9:29, 9:30, getting closer and closer to good old Christmas time. So today is the first day of my vacation. My last day of school was yesterday. So very very exciting. I'm gonna enjoy the time off. So we I work part time at the Montessori school in Belfast, so we have our staff party today in a few hours. I'm like, very excited. I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate with not only am I super happy with the folks I work with at the school. They're all super awesome people. And the other thing that's really great about it is that they're all really good cooks, and so they're gonna all make. Everybody's making food and desserts and things, so it's gonna be great. Putting on some poundage probably today. I made some quiche, so excited about that. And then after that, I'm going to another party later tonight, another Christmas party. So yeah, it's that's a first. So exciting time. I officially have been swept up in the spirit of Santa Claus. I started decorating. I kind of get into the season late, and I did it. Well, I was into the spirit or into the mood of Christmas pretty early on this year, but I didn't actually decorate or put anything up and or did any shopping until yesterday. So it's full bore right now, and along with all of those Christmas activities comes Christmas movies. And of course, with Christmas movies, unlike any other holiday that we celebrate here in the good old United States of America, Christmas is by far the biggest holiday. Halloween's my favorite, and then Christmas. Although this past Halloween really sucked, so I have a really different. I mean, personally, I love Halloween and everything, but the holiday itself, I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't really give a shit about it anymore. It's weird. I never thought I'd say that, just because I tried throwing a party at my house and it was a disaster because like literally nobody showed up. It was a joke. So I was just like, fuck this, and I'm not doing this again. And I'm not going to do anything like that again. But anyway, Christmas has always been a really big popular holiday for me, and obviously with the public. And as far as movies go, which is the focus of this channel here at Film Fanatic, there's more movies tied to the holiday. There's more movies tied to this holiday than there is any other holiday. Of course, Halloween, there's a ton of films tied to the holiday. There are a few for Thanksgiving, but not a whole lot. There's a couple for New Year's Eve or a few for New Year's Eve, but Christmas, it's a an endless ocean of Christmas movies. You have straight up kids movies, animated movies, you have adult movies, you even have action movies, you have tons of horror films, all kinds of things. So today or this morning is my kickoff to my Halloween, my Christmas movie watching marathon, where every day up until from it started last night, which was Thursday night. So every day up until Christmas morning or Christmas Day, which I'm not sure. We're probably not going to watch Christmas movies on Christmas Day. I have a tentative plan, which it's not. It's probably not going to happen. Of going to see Nosferatu, the new Robert Eggers movie. It opens on Christmas Day, and I'm probably not going to be able to really go see it Christmas Day night, which I wanted to, because of Christmas family obligations. But I will definitely see it. I'm going to try to shoot for seeing it the day after, perhaps. I really, really want to see it. But this is the first. I started last night was the kickoff, and from last night, which was Thursday, till Christmas Day, I will be doing a video on my Christmas movie collection. I have my favorites, but I'm going to keep this somewhat of an informal list. I'm going to be just watching. I have quite a few Christmas movies, so I'm just going to be watching them as I go and talking about them. All of these movies I've seen. There's going to be one movie that I bought that I have not actually seen yet. I saw many, many years ago, but I never saw it on Blu-ray, so I'm very excited about watching that. And so that's going to be coming up. The two movies that I always watch on Christmas, the two movies I guess you could say that gets away from an informal list, but probably definitely the two movies I watch every Christmas season religiously, haha, no pun intended, is I always watch Die Hard, Bruce Willis. To me, that's an epic Christmas movie. I always watch that, and it's always been one of my favorites. And that is one of the movies my plan is to watch. A couple of the movies are kind of very very short, so I think I'll have time to do a double duty on a couple of nights, but we'll see. The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, for instance, that's only 15 minutes long. I have that on Blu-ray. But so two movies that I watch every Christmas that goes without saying. It's kind of like with Halloween. I always watch John Carpenter's Halloween on Halloween. I always watch that, and then the other movie I always watch is Dark Knight of the Scarecrow. Those two movies are for me around that holiday, around Halloween. The Halloween holiday are essential, so I always watch those movies every year. And then for Christmas, I always watch Die Hard with Bruce Willis, the first one, and then I always watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase. Those two movies I always watch every Christmas. I don't have either of those on Blu-ray, which is weird. I have DVD DVD copies of both. So I will try to cram those in as well. But starting starting today and it started last night, each night I'm going to do a review for a Christmas movie in kind of a looser kind of setting. I did a Christmas show on a animated Christmas movie called The Snowman, which I had never seen from the early '80s. It's a British animated film, which is amazing. I watched it for the first time a couple of weeks ago. Never saw it, and I kicked myself for never seeing because it's just such a heartfelt tale, kind of depressing, kind of sad, and but amazing, amazing, and it totally put me in the Christmas spirit. So that technically was the kickoff, but now I will be doing it each night or each day. And it's funny because when I like again, I get really into Christmas, but typically what happens the day after Christmas, I'm like done. I'm like totally done with Christmas. I like, it's almost like I burn it out of my system by the time Christmas night comes, or I should say the next day. I take everything down. I take my tree down. I'm like done with Christmas. That's typically what happens for me. And my parents, they do the same thing, which is kind of funny. A lot of people keep up their Christmas ornaments, their trees, and all those things for weeks on end after Christmas. But my family, like the day Christmas is over, it's like it's over. We take everything down and pack everything away. It's funny, and I've kind of been in that. I've kind of always been doing that for a long time. But today's first Christmas movie to start off this whole series is Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. The last film of my favorite director. This came out in 1999. This is the movie I did get a chance to see. I saw this when it came out. It came out pretty much after I was done with college. I remember being home. I had finished school more or less, and then I moved here to Maine, and I came here. I guess officially moved to Maine in like late '98, and this came out in '99, and this was one of the first movies I saw in the theater. It was at the Colonial Theater, and this was I believe it's the only, yeah, it's the only Stanley Kubrick movie that I ever got a chance to see in a theater. You know, Stanley Kubrick is my favorite filmmaker of all time. Masterpiece after masterpiece, if you look at his films. Probably my favorite film of his is probably The Shining. But again, everything is just high art. I just consider all of his films high art. And you might say, and again, this film, I have seen it talked about in the light of it being a Christmas movie. As strange as that seems or sounds, but I have seen people kind of come to this conclusion that they do believe that Eyes Wide Shut is a Christmas movie. And again, I've seen this movie so many times I can't even count. This movie to me is a masterpiece, and the thing that's so funny about this movie, which is it's not a very funny movie, but watched it last night. I got to finish a little bit more. Got a late start to watching it, but it's such a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite Kubrick movies. The This movie I think has more Christmas stuff. Like literally, there's in every scene there is a Christmas tree. There's Christmas lights. There's Christmas music. I mean, I don't know of any other Christmas movie out there, like movies that are overtly Christmas movies, that have as much of a Christmas vibe or aesthetic in each scene like this movie does. Like literally every scene, there's a Christmas tree, there's Christmas lights, there's all of these decorations. It takes place in New York City and mostly at night, so you are constantly seeing Christmas lights and constantly seeing Christmas decorations. It's pretty funny because this movie itself is the Christmas aesthetic or the Christmas kind of timeline that this film takes place in is is literally its own thing, but the story itself has absolutely nothing to do with Christmas. So it's a real interesting kind of combination of different things. This movie, I think, for Kubrick, this movie is one of the most mysterious movies he's ever directed. It's um, it's a very esoteric film. This movie, obviously, it starred Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. They shortly after this film was put out or released, they divorced, which is I always found really ironic and kind of a telltale sign of what this movie was kind of about. This movie has so much to say about, I think, perceptions and how men and women interact. It's about sexuality. I think there's about it's also about kind of esoteric and to a degree, you know, ancient occult practices, the use of ritual in a group setting with people or a collective or individually. This it's got so many elements. This movie, and again, this is one of those movies I've seen so many times, like all of Kubrick's movies. I mean, he's just such a brilliant. He was such a brilliant mind. Not only is he, you know, my favorite director of all time, but for me, he's a personal hero. He really is. Like it goes beyond, you know, the idea of him just being a favorite director of mine. I look to him as being like a personal hero, you know, and it's really really interesting. Like one of the main um, thinkers that has helped kind of made me, for good or bad, made me or helped shape me into the person who I am, you know. And I've talked about that a lot. Like it's not just, oh, I really love his films. It's like, of course, it's that, but philosophically, the inspiration of his whole kind of worldview has really inspired me personally. And anything that I do artistically, I mean, just this whole the work ethic that he was always about. The My favorite quote, and it's actually on this. This is a beautiful Blu-ray version of this film. Again, I saw. It's hard to believe that this came out in 1999, which is just crazy to me. But I saw this. I saw Eyes Wide Shut in the theater, and it truly was a magical experience. I remember seeing it in a Colonial Theater. It was a packed house, and I remember just being totally absorbed into this film. I got really into. I always loved The Shining and a handful of other Kubrick movies. Growing up, but it wasn't until when I got into college, I had a couple of friends that really got me further interested into film. And it was when I was in college of where I started to really kind of dig deep and look at Kubrick for who he was as a director, and really got into his whole world. And so that's kind of where it really took off for me. And it was a strange time because Kubrick had just passed away. I think it was like a few weeks before this movie was going to premiere. And it was a real big tragedy. It was very depressing, but I thought this movie was incredible. And I remember when I saw it in the theater, there was just this like eerie quietness after the movie. Nobody said anything. The credits came up, the music came up, and it felt like everybody in the audience, like there was silence. Nobody said anything. There was no clapping. It was one of the most powerful and one of the most kind of unique experiences I've had going to a movie. There was like this weird calm, but everybody was um, in this really kind of strange state. Like the energy was really electrified, but in a really kind of strange way. Very hard to describe. Because usually, you typically go to a movie and either sometimes people will be, clapping, or people will start talking about the film, and there'll be like the usual kind of, you know, after, an audience sitting there for a couple of hours in silence watching the film, they'll you'll hear people kind of react and talk, but there was none of that. It was like, and nobody got up after the movie. Typically, a lot of the times people will. This movie is a longer film. It's 2 hours and like 30 minutes, I believe. And a lot of times when now I see it more nowadays when I go to the movies. But you go to the movies and a lot of films are a little bit on the longer side these days. And a lot of times you'll see the minute the credits come up, people get right up, and they grab their garbage from their candy or popcorn, and they head right for the door. And it's not necessarily something, they're not necessarily doing that because they didn't like the movie. It's just kind of how people sometimes behave. And I see that a lot. But this, I remember, Eyes Wide Shut, everybody, not one person got out of their seat, and everyone in the theater stayed until the very, very final moment of the credits. And then you started to see people slowly get up. It was really interesting. I've never seen that before. I remember even seeing like The Force Awakens, which Star Wars movie, which was a hugely anticipated film. Would get up, and there was like talking, and not everybody stayed to the very, very end. Most people did, but this was unusual. And so I, after seeing it in the theater, I rented it on DVD a bunch of times. I saw it a bunch of times on DVD. I don't think I owned it though. Um, trying to think if I had a copy of this. No, I don't think I did. But I used to rent it all the time at Apros Video. It was a regular movie of mine. I got really obsessed with this movie. This movie has so many different layers. It's kind of like peeling an onion, and I feel like this is definitely, and I've talked about that experience a lot with movies, certain movies where, when a movie's got a lot of depth or something to kind of say, or it has a very, kind of ambiguous premise, you can go back to that movie time and time again and get something new out of it. And this is one of those movies, without a doubt, a primetime example of that. Every time I watch it, I get something, I get some kind of new information about it. And I just love that. It's like, it's very ambiguous. And about probably 3 years ago, I bought this amazing Blu-ray collection of this film. And there's like hours of special features. There's like 3 or 4 hours of special features on here, which is just incredible. There's interviews with all of his team on this film, and Kubrick also, Stanley Kubrick pretty much used the same crew on all of his films. And there's interviews with him, with all of those folks that worked with him. There's all kinds of interviews with all the actors involved with this movie. It's pretty spectacular. One of the things that to me is one of my favorite things that Kubrick has ever said, or for me one of the most inspiring thing, he gave during the last few years of his life, he was given the Lifetime Achievement Award, and he went to accept his award, and he went. It was in California, and he gave a speech. And in the speech, he was talking about the flight of Icarus, the epic kind of fable, the story of Icarus flying too close to the sun and his wings melting, and then him crashing to the ground. And he brought this up during his acceptance speech, and he was saying on how typically the way he looks at that story, the classic, you know, metaphor about around it, the classic mythological significance of that story, and he said during the speech that most people look at that classic story, the flight of Icarus, as being a cautionary tale, meaning that someone can be so ambitious and so driven that they don't see that that it could be their downfall. And he was referencing this classic fable or story, and he said for most societies, most people, the flight of Icarus is a cautionary tale. But for him, it was an inspiration. And he said the problem that he has with it is that, well, the problem that he had with Icarus was that, yes, he flew too close to the sun, and then he crashes and burns. But what Icarus should have done is he should have created stronger wings once he got closer to the sun. And that always struck me in such a strong way, meaning that, artistically, you reach all of these hurdles, and you fall into these pitfalls, but you stay focused, and you somehow possibly reinvent the wheel, or reinvent acquiring these tools, but then reinvent on how you're going to try to achieve your goal. And that always was, like, to me, one of the most inspiring things that I had ever heard in general. And ever since then, I was, like, really moved by him as a person. Not, and coming from a place of where I've always loved his films. And he remains my favorite director. And, like, again, I said he's one of those key figures in my life that I find the most inspirational. For me personally, my my personal heroes, I think every person probably has those heroes out there, people that really inspire them. And my list of folks, my list of legends that I really look up to, not only, where they inspire me in a particular way, but just in general. That list would include Bruce Lee. I think, like, with Bruce Lee being someone who I'm a huge fan of martial arts. I've recently kind of got back into martial arts, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's been great. And so Bruce Lee for me has always been one of the most inspirational characters, or not characters, but one of the most thinkers in the world of martial arts. Uh, I am also another figure that is in this list is Joseph Campbell. All of his amazing work on his research about mythology and metaphor, on how there are all of there's this kind of ancient lineage in the world's religions, and all of the world's fables and mythology, on how, you know to a degree, it is the land of make believe, but it's an integral fabric of kind of who we are as a people. Joseph Campbell's always been one of my heroes. Friedrich Nietzsche has always been one of my favorite, definitely my favorite quote unquote philosophers, mainly because he looks at man as first and foremost as kind of an animal, but also sees that, the key reasons why religion is adapted into man's life, but then also can corrupt man's life. One of the most inspirational figures in my life, and of course Stanley Kubrick. I put him also in this category. And another figure would be Anton LaVey. He also was, for me, in the world of the occult, someone who combed for all of the murky depths of misunderstandings about the occult, and codified and looked at and created a system of where there was a practicality to it. So all of these figures are all like deeply, and I should say the last, without leaving him out, Akira Kurosawa, who is also one of my all-time favorite directors, Japanese director. Same thing. So all of these figures are, for me, not just you know because I'm a fan of martial arts, or because I have had, lots of experience and an interest in the occult, or not just because I've had a deep love of film. It goes beyond that, or philosophy. It goes beyond that, and Kubrick is definitely in that same category. And with Eyes Wide Shut, again, I've seen this movie so many times, and every time I get something a little bit different. It's a very mysterious film. It deals with, like, again, really deals with, like, relationships, relationship dynamics. Women trying to understand men, men trying to understand women. There is a deep kind of esoteric language to this film. It deals with the I think, to a degree, it deals with kind of the mysteries of life, occultism, ancient practices, but I think at its core, it's about taking a cold, hard look at how people interact with each other. Especially in the bedroom, and it really explores those taboos This film also, I feel like it's a very strange movie, but it also has, again, it's a very esoteric film. But I feel like this movie is a thriller too. It's definitely like a really intense thriller, and it's a slow burn, and it's a very mysterious film, and it moves at a really slow pace, but it's so deliberate. I feel, and also it kind of rides that line between whether or not you, as the viewer, or the characters in this film are in this dream state, or if they are awakened, or in a awakened state, and it kind of blurs that line between the dream and the reality state. And that's the other thing about this movie is it does feel like you're in this kind of strange, surrealistic dream. And with all of those elements that are a part of this movie, that to me is why it's like peeling. It's like peeling an onion each time. There's always a new layer. There's always something new to take in. There's always a little bit of information that you might have missed. And I love how ambiguous this movie is because by the end of this movie, there I think Kubrick did set out to make it a somewhat definitive ending to a degree, but I also feel like he cultivated this story in this movie to keep it pretty ambiguous so each person can kind of draw their own conclusions. And I think I really love music and films that do that, art in general, because you can have your own, individual experience, and it can mean something to you at a different time and place, depending on who you are or where you're at as a person. And I think that really gives it a real rich and deep feeling where it just really resonates with you. And at the end of the day, it's a fucking Christmas movie because I would challenge anybody out there that doesn't believe or does that thinks that that's totally crazy because literally, yeah, the film, the story itself has is obviously not Christmas in any way, shape, or form, but the world that this movie takes place in is as Christmas oriented as one could possibly imagine. You could not find even if you take like say a movie like Elf or It's a Wonderful Life that are or even Christmas Vacation, which are they're the whole thing of those films is that they are Christmas movies, and but you could take those movies and like look at some of the scenes, the frames, the cinematography. There is way more Christmas in this movie than any of those films combined. It's wild. It's wild. And I just think it's a real interesting juxtaposition. Love this movie, and so stay tuned. There'll be more Christmas movies coming your way. But this was the first one to kick things off. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.